Hello everybody, and anybody who knows me can tell you that I love Spider-Man. He's my favorite superhero of all time. He's one of my favorite characters of all time. I grew up with that character, I've read the comic books, I've seen the animated series. I can quote the entire Raimi trilogy, I've seen it at least 10 times. I know basically the entire screenplay. I've seen the Homecoming film at least 10 times. I've seen the Amazing Spider-Man film at least 10 times. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 I think I've only rewatched once. For obvious reasons, it's not a good movie. And Far From Home, since it was the most recent one, I haven't rewatched yet. Maybe in the future. What I'm trying to say that I love this character, if that wasn't obvious from what I just said. So today, in this video, I want to talk about stuff that I want to see in Sony Spider-Man movies in the future. This is not a prediction video, because it's kind of impossible to predict what Sony is going to do with this character, since we still haven't gotten Spider-Man 3 in the MCU. After that film, we can, at least somewhat predict, but it's still kind of hard. What I'm going to do in this video is just talk about what I want to see in Sony Spidey films, the stuff that I feel like they should do with this beloved web-slinger. Back in August, when the news broke through the internet that Spidey is leaving MCU, I was kind of devastated as anybody else. Because although I do have my fair share of problems with this character in the MCU, I've even made a video about that, still, in MCU's hands, this character is safe. It is not the perfect interpretation of Spider-Man. He's not my favorite interpretation of Spider-Man, by no means. But still, those movies are at least just entertaining films. They're safe films, as I'm saying. But then after a little bit of time, after that entire information sunk in, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of excited about this, because I do have my problems with the MCU Spidey. He's not the Spider-Man I personally want and need in my life. I feel like Spider-Man could be way better. I was like, you know what? If Spidey was back in Sony's hands, maybe they could fix this character, and maybe they could do something new. Now I know what you're thinking. Are you crazy? Sony ruined the last 3 Spidey films that they worked on, the 2 The Amazing Spider-Man films, and Spider-Man 3 in the Raimi trilogy. I am aware of that. Sony is not to be trusted, but I'm kind of tired of MCU's interpretation of the Spider-Man. And that interpretation does work in the MCU world, but it is not the interpretation I want. It is not the Spider-Man that I need in my life. It unfortunately isn't. So I am hoping that maybe, just maybe, Sony could bring back the Spider-Man spirit. I know I may be blinded of fangirl hoping for stuff that won't happen, but maybe Sony have learned their lessons, that they need to give the directors creative freedom. Do I sound dumb now? I don't know. But yeah, when that news actually sunk in, I was like, you know what, this couldn't be the the worst thing ever. This has some potential. The first thing that I feel like Sony could do with Spider-Man would be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but live-action version. Now, you probably have seen fan posters of that, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland in one poster. That would be the best thing ever, but is it actually possible? Probably, but it's probably not going to happen. It's probably just a fangirls and fanboys' fantasies, but let's just imagine it as a possibility right now. First of all, Sony would probably think that we have the animated version. Why would we need the live-action one? Secondly, probably Andrew Garfield wouldn't want to be back in a Spidey movie with Sony, because Sony kind of disrespected him back in the day. However, he does love Spider-Man. I mean, remember his Comic-Con speech? I still do. He loves the character, so maybe he would be back, but I highly doubt it. However, Tobey Maguire could be back. His career is kind of dormant right now. It's not thriving anymore, so he could want to come back to this character, which would be incredible. The plot could be that there's a crisis going on in any of the other Spider-Man's worlds, and other Spider-Men come to help him. That would be pretty interesting to see. And Tobey Maguire would play the older version of Spidey, the version I've wanted to see in a live action for a long time. Spider-Man who's a teacher, the older guy, and he could teach the younger Spider-Man, Tom Holland, a couple of lessons. That would be awesome. But this idea with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in live action isn't just a great way to make $2 billion at the box office, but it also gives an opportunity for Sony to make a lot of other Spidey films, because there are so many versions of Spidey, like Spider-Man 2099, or Scarlet Spider-Man, or Spider-Man Noir. Imagine a live-action film about Spider-Man Noir. If it's done right, how freaking awesome would that be? It would be perfect. Now let's think about the possibility of Sony rebooting Spider-Man for the 4th time. I mean, it is possible. And if they do that, what version of Spider-Man would I want to see? The version I would love to see would be the adult Spider-Man, the teacher Spider-Man, which we had in the Amazing Spider-Man comic books in the 90s. As I already briefly mentioned, I do love the storyline of Spider-Man in the 90s, the Amazing Spider-Man comic books, where Peter is an adult and he's a teacher. It's a story that I've always loved ever since I was a kid. I actually wanted to see that in live action for such a long time. I mean, we've already had 3 versions of teenager, young adult Spidey. How awesome would that be to see something different, an adult Spidey? If it's done right, again, it could be really interesting. Because in the story, Peter Parker has been Spider-Man for years, he's an experienced superhero, so stakes could be higher and we could get some big ambitious films where a threat is huge and we actually feel like Spider-Man could die. In the first couple of issues of this storyline in the Amazing Spider-Man comic books, Spider-Man has to fight against Morlun, which is a similar villain to Morbius. He's also a vampire, and I remember reading that as a kid and for the first time feeling like Spider-Man could die. Because that guy, basically, if he smelled Spidey for at least 1 second, that's it. He's going to find him anywhere, and Peter can't even go to his apartment and sleep because he could be just killed easily. So Morlun was the first villain that made me feel like, oh my god, Spider-Man could die. So they could introduce Morlun and explore that storyline. I feel like that would be very interesting to see. Or we also have another vampire already in Sony, Morbius, which is going to be played by Jared Leto. I'm excited to see that, although that movie looks kind of shitty. It looks like a movie out of 2000s, which I'm not complaining about. I feel like it's going to be like Venom, you know, kind of garbage, but fun garbage, kind of entertainment piece. So I feel like it's going to be that, but obviously in a Spider-Man film, I would want to see a good Spidey film with a good villain. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see either one, either Morbius or Morlun. Also in this storyline, Aunt May finds out that Peter is Spider-Man, which I always loved, and how it was done in the comic books. It was really interesting and very emotional, so I would love to see that as well. So yeah, all the Sony executives who are watching this video right now, who make time out of their busy schedules to watch my video, please make a live-action Spidey film where Spider-Man is an adult. I want to see that storyline. Please, but don't screw it up. Now, if you think that I was a silly fangirl wishing for Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse to happen in live action, well, you're about to hear me say that Sony, make Spider-Man 4 with Sam Raimi. I know that the possibilities of this happening is pretty much 1 to billion. I am aware of that. But Spider-Man 4, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, all these guys, is a movie that I would do anything to see. But honestly, if Sony could promise Sam Raimi creative freedom, maybe he would be back for Spider-Man 4. I mean, he said last year that he still thinks about Spider-Man 4 that he never got to make. It broke my heart to read that because Sam Raimi, same man. I mean, I think about that all the time. And my idea about Spider-Man 4 and adult Peter actually combines in the storyline because at this point, Tobey Maguire is a grown man. I mean, he was back in the day in those movies as well, but now he's like really, really grown. So he could actually be the adult Peter that I was just talking about. And I feel like if there's one person who could perfectly execute this storyline, it would be Sam Raimi. The idea of one more Spidey film with Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire on the big screen gives me shivers. Raimi could come back and finish this franchise on a great note. And actually, you know what? Don't finish it. Make a 5th one, 6th one, however many movies you want. Sam Raimi, do it. I feel like if this man is given complete creative freedom, he could do it. And he could redeem himself after the 3rd film, which wasn't his fault. But at the end of the day, he is the director. His name is on the film, so a lot of people are like, oh, Sam Raimi made a bad 3rd film. But at this point, we all do know it wasn't his fault. But he could come back and make the story he always wanted to make, and he still thinks about it. So, please, Sony, do that just for me. I know, my opinion is very important, but you know what? Entire Raimi community, Raimi fan community want it. And not only Raimi fan community, I know that a lot of Spidey fans would want to see that. But all that blind dreaming aside, in the Morbius trailer, as you guys know, we had a shot where behind Morbius we have this wall that has a drawing of Spider-Man, and it is from the Insomniac's game, and it is the Raimi suit. If this doesn't mean anything, then this is such an odd choice, because I do know that Sony doesn't have rights to use Tom Holland's Spidey outfits from the MCU, but they could literally use any other Spidey image, Spidey drawing, and put it in the wall. But for some reason, they chose the Raimi trilogy, the Raimi suit. I mean, it's so bizarre if that doesn't mean anything. Also recently, we had an image from the set of the Morbius that had a Daily Bugle newspaper that said Spider-Man has disappeared, but the Daily Bugle logo was the same exact logo from the Raimi trilogy. Now I know these are small details, and you may be like, you're just dreaming. It means nothing, but why? I mean, why do these details not matter? I mean, at the end of the day, maybe these details are hinting at something. I mean, think about it. Why couldn't Sony put any other Spidey pic on the wall other than the MCU Spidey? They could use any Spidey art. Why did they choose the Raimi suit? And why did they use the Daily Bugle logo? These details do matter, at least I do hope. And if all these little things are hinting at something, they're hinting at possibility of Raimi returning. And lastly, if Sony does continue Spider-Man's storyline from the MCU, I hope they do it well. I'm not exactly sure how Sony could continue Peter's storyline from MCU films because those movies are so connected with the MCU and with other heroes, and although there will be a third film, I don't think they could completely change everything. It's probably going to be still in the MCU with other heroes, so I'm not exactly sure how could they just isolate Peter from all those heroes and say, oh, okay, here it is Peter, just on its own, he's nothing about Avengers anymore. So that would be kind of weird. Also, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen in the third film at this point, because at the end of the second, we found out that everybody now knows that Peter is Spider-Man. Either they're going to just make it a joke, like, oh, that was a thing that just happened and it's not a big deal, or maybe just something will happen. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with it, but I do hope that they actually don't go with this idea because Peter is still really young in those movies. He's just, he's 17? I mean, for a 17-year-old Peter Parker going through that, everybody knowing his identity, is really damaging. Also, he could become Iron Man Jr. at this point. Like, all those jokes aside, if Spider-Man is known in the MCU, if his identity is out, I feel like all he could do is go and be Tony Stark number 2. And at this point, I mean, Tony left everything he had to Peter, edit glasses and everything. So it's a thing that is a little bit confusing right now. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with this, how they're going to continue the storyline of Peter Parker and Sony. But as I said, whatever they do, I hope they do it well. But at the end of the day, whether Sony goes with Tom Holland's Spider-Man or they reboot the entire franchise, whatever they do, I hope that they manage to make a film about Spider-Man that captures the essence of this character. So yeah, those were my ideas for Sony's future Spidey films, my hopes and dreams that are probably just gonna stay hopes and dreams, which is very sad to admit, but now I want to know your opinion. What are your hopes and dreams for Spidey films in the future? What are the Spidey films that you want to see in the Sony-verse, Sony universe, whatever Sony's going to do with the Spider-Man character? What do you want to see in those films? No matter how crazy and fanboyish it is, let me know down in the comments below. Let's talk about this character, because as you guys already know, if you couldn't tell, I love this character. But no, all jokes aside, let's do it. Let's talk about Spider-Man. And also, guys, I have an Instagram account which I created quite recently. I will have my Instagram account in my bio. Go follow me there if you're interested in my movie opinions, if you enjoy that. I post pretty much daily about movies, movie topics randomly, just random stuff that I'm watching, movie reviews, everything. And if you're interested in that, follow me, please. And if you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like, and if you didn't, you can leave a dislike. And if you don't want to miss my other movie and TV show related videos, subscribe to this channel. Bye.